Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's Daf Hayomi Maseches BECHOROS Daf Gimel. We began the brand new parak, the last parak of El Masechta. We shift to a new topic, Maser Behema. So the notable difference, actually two notable differences between the Bechor, firstborn kosher animal that we had learned about until now, and the upcoming discussion regarding Maser Behema. Two primary differences are, in contrast to a Bechor, who is born Kaddish, he's Kaddish Merechem, it's a natural Kedusha, Maser Behema must be activated by the owner. So he takes this group of animals, he has 10 animals, he has a minion, right? And opens the door to the pen, lets them out one at a time, and number 10, he strikes with his red paintbrush, and he declares it as the Maser, right? Maser, Me'eser, 1 of 10. So it's done manually. That's the first distinctive feature of Maser Behema. Number 2, it's not given to the Kohen. Bechor is a gift to the Kohen. Maser Behema is attended to by its owner. So if it's unblemished, and he brings it to the Beis HaMikdash as a carbon, but if it gets a mum, then it's his to keep. He does the shechita anywhere. In any case, it's not going to the Kohen. Says the Mishnah, Maser Behema. Now we learn the parameters of the mitzvah of Maser Behema. It applies noyeg ba'aretz in Eretz Yisrael, u'b'chutz la'aretz outside Eretz Yisrael, b'fnei habayis, v'sheloi b'fnei habayis, whether or not there's a Beis HaMikdash standing, b'chulin, on all your private behemoths, avaloi b'mikdash, not on karbanos. If you have a shlamim, you can't designate it as Maser Behema. The Gemara will ask, of course not. It's not yours to tinker with, and we're going to discuss that later. Now, what type of behemoths? V'noig b'bakar applies to heavy, cattle, u'betzayin to light animals like sheep or goats. And each class of animals needs to be attended to separately. So a separate Maser Behema from the cattle, a separate from the tzayin. Ve'ein mis asrin, you can't do Maser from one or the other. Mizalza, you can't combine them, for the minyan. But in terms of the tzayin category, which has two subsets, sheep and goats, that's close enough to share, to be combined into one Maser Behema. But kvasim beizim, mis asrin, mizalza, you can do Maser from one or the other. Now each season is separate and distinct. B'chadash, it applies to this year's, offspring of Yashin and last year's. Ve'enon mis asrim mizazeh, even though you still have to take maser from last year if you haven't, but you can't mix them up. You can't combine them to the minyan. So each season gets its own maser. So now the truth is, Shayi Badin, you can present an argument as follows. If each season is separate, wouldn't you think that goats and sheep are separate? Look, even the new and the old, the seasons, which are technically one of the same type. There's no kalaim issues for crossbreeding this year's and last year's sheep. Of course not, right? Nevertheless, each one stays separate, has its own obligation regarding Maser Behema. You can't combine them into one pen. Wouldn't you agree that kvasim ve'izim, sheep and goats, shein kalaim, which are distinct varieties, and you can't mate and crossbreed them, right? Then wouldn't you agree, Shalohu mis asrin, you cannot do maser from one or the other, Talmud Leimar. Comes the pasuk and packages together as one. V'chol maser bakar, vatzayin denotes both types. Talmud Leimar vatzayin, mashma kol tzayin echad, all types of tzayin is one and the same regarding Maser Behema. Now, Mishnah began by saying that Maser Behema applies everywhere, all times, all animals, right? Everywhere, even in Chutz La'aretz, Leima Masnis, and perhaps the opinion voiced in the Mishnah is the loy, unlike Rabbi Akiva, the Sani, who says that it only applies in Eretz Yisrael. The Sani, we have a Brayso, Rekiva Eimer, Yochel Ya'ala Adam, perhaps a person can bring up the Maser Behema from outside Eretz Yisrael, Chutz La'aretz, Yakriveno offered as a carbon Eretz Yisrael, in the Beis HaMikdash, Talmud Leimar. Bring over there, deliver to the Beis HaMikdash. Oiloi seichem, oilois, vezevchechem, your other carbonis. Ves masrei seichem. Two types of maser. What two types? The pasuk here is alluding to two separate types: the grain type and the animal type. B'shtei maasrei sakasam adaber. The Torah is referring to two types of maser. Echad maser behema. One is the maser behema that we're discussing today. Ve'echad maser dagan, and the grain maser. And there's a correlation between the two. Just like we know that maser dagan is limited to Eretz Yisrael, as Rashi points out, it's chayvat ha'aretz. It's land-related obligations, which is limited to Eretz Yisrael, with the kedusha Eretz Yisrael. Likewise, maser behema is limited to Eretz Yisrael. From where you bring maser dagan, i.e. Eretz Yisrael, atamala maser behema, likewise maser behema can come. Or maser dagan, but a place where maser dagan does not come from, such as outside Eretz Yisrael, likewise maser behema does not come from there. Atamala maser behema. So clearly, Rabbi Akiva disallows maser behema from outside Eretz Yisrael, and we're saying in our Mishnah that applies everywhere equally. Answer: I feel like Rabbi Akiva, our Mishnah can follow Rabbi Akiva as well. Even he agrees that you're obligated to do maser behema outside Eretz Yisrael, and it has kedusha. You wait for it to get a mum and you eat it. You can bring it as a korban. That's exclusive to the Eretz Yisrael crop. Kan le karva, the brisa which limits it to Eretz Yisrael crop, that's regarding hakrava as a korban. That is unique to Eretz Yisrael crop. Kan le kaddish, but outside Eretz Yisrael, although you can't do hakrava, but it has kedusha, as says the Gemara Dekanami. You could even discern this in the wording of the brisa. In seeking to present a source for this concept, which pasuk does the brisa mean? Which pasuk does it allude to? A pasuk which speaks about offering as a korban. And regarding that, we exclude chutz ha'aretz. But not regarding kedusha, the economy. Look very closely to the lashon. The konaslo tamguda, the brisa offers the pasuk of Esam Shama, which speaks about hakrava shema mina. That proves our point. Regarding hakrava, that's limited to Eretz Yisrael products. Regarding kedusha, that applies everywhere. Yachi asked the Gemara the obvious. Look, if there's no hakrava on the maser behema, am I kaddish with respect to with what is the kaddish? Don't have to wait for it to get a blemish. It has kedusha, but you can't bring it as a korban. The only option is to wait for a mum to arrive, and then the owner eats it. So technically, it applies everywhere. But hakrava is unique to Eretz Yisrael crop, so it applies everywhere and in every time. Whether the bias is standing, or after destruction of Beis Hamikdash. Ask the Gemara, okay, so now, what about nowadays? If that's the case, it applies every time, even when there's no Mikdash. Even today, we should do maser behema. It's a mitzvah d'oraisa. Answers the Gemara to Rav Huna. Ask Rav Huna. If you allow the practice today, the farmer might not be cognizant of all the details, all the halachas. He might actually include a yasam, an orphaned animal whose mother died during childbirth, who is excluded from hakrava, from the ability to be turned into a korban, to be turned into maser behema. He might include that as well. So we want to avoid confusion, and therefore we suspend the practice today at all. Well, if that's your concern, then, well, in the good old days, the farmer wasn't necessarily the most learned man either. So why not have the same concern that he might mix in invalid candidates into his mix? Ela efsha b'achroza. Oh, it's possible to circumvent this issue by the Bezdin, the supreme authority, will let it be known, will teach the masses all the halachis and the parameters and the guidelines. So Achanami now as well. Efsha b'achroza, the local Bezdin in town, will tell everybody what to do. So that can't be a concern. Elamad Rava says, Rava, the reason is b'shem takala. You know which concern is unique to nowadays? Takala. At the time of the Mikdash, you bring it as a korban, but nowadays you can't. You have to wait for a mum. And by the time that happens, Rashi says, you might go and share the sheep, work with it, or shecht it without a mum, not realizing, right? And therefore we just suspend the practice altogether. Umina Temra, the Chashinu Takala. Ask the Gemara, what do we see that in fact this is a valid concern, and we go ahead and we disallow practices on account of this concern? The Sani Baba Braisa, Ein Makdishin. Nowadays you shouldn't commit things to Hekdesh. What are you going to do with it? Ve'en Maricha, nor should you pledge, the value of another Yid, a fixed rate set by the Torah. Once again, there's no way to deliver the money. What is V'machrim? This is another form of hegdish, right? V'zman hazeh nowadays, because there's no recipient. V'migdish, v'herich, v'hechrim. Let's say he did proceed, he made hegdish, etc. Okay, there's no alternative but to destroy the material. Behema, if he donated a behema to yakar, incapacitated. Peiros oksus v'kelim, you have fruit, you have produce, you have garments, you have utensils, yirakfu, let it rot and spoil. Mois, kli matches, what about metal items, coins and metal utensils? Yoylech liyam hamelech, take it to the Dead Sea, throw it in there. Tastes adds, you can grind it up and throw it into any sea. The point is to make it inaccessible. What exactly is the ikr that is done by the behema? You lock the door in front of it, and it just dies inside. In any case, we see how careful we are in terms of avoiding any concern of having hegdish material lying around which can be mistakenly bumped into and used inappropriately. And that explains why we suspend the entire practice, the entire mitzvah of Maser Behema nowadays, for concern of takal. Ask the Gemara, okay, the same should apply to Bechor nowadays. You should not have a Kedusha because of the same concern. You have to wait for it to get a mum. Well, what do you mean, Bechor? The Bechor status is not manually generated, as we explained before, but the Dan Talimos is it up to us to decide whether or not to designate a Bechor Meirecham Kodesh. It's Kodesh from birth. What do you mean to say? The question was, let's implement a process which bypasses, which preempts the Kedusha of the Bechor. Sell the errors of the birthing mothers to a guy, which prevents the Kedusha from being applied to begin with on the newborn. Because if the guy has a chelik, a part in the mother animal, it exempts the mother from Bechor. So why not implement that system for all farmers to avoid Kedusha's Bechor, to avoid possible takala because of the long wait for the mum to arrive. We turn Talmud Beis. The reason why we don't do the goy option, because we have a more acceptable option. Efsha could Rav Yehuda. We can go like Rav Yehuda. The Rav Yehuda, you don't have to sell it to a guy. By selling it to a guy, we're preempting any kedusha from being chal on that bechor. It's not going to be given to a kohen either. It's totally a regular animal, and that's a problem. We had a Gemara Daf Gimel. Rav Murray applied that system, and he lost his animals because he was mafkia. Rashi says on the third line, mafkia lo mikdushas kohen. Afilu mikdushas kohen. We don't want to do that. We don't want to go there. But we can still implement a lesser option, less severe process. One is allowed to inflict a wound, a slight wound, nick the ear of the bechor as it's being born, before it leaves the mother. So before it's born, just make it into a balmum. So on the one hand, you won't have a long wait because a balmum can be shechted right away. On the other hand, give it to the kohen; it belongs to him. So you're still fulfilling the mitzvah, and that's why we choose that option over the partnership with a guy, as opposed to Maser Behema, which has to be suspended altogether. We have no real option there to avoid takala. Why not? Hachanami here as well, but Maser Behema, why not do the mum option? Efsha deshada bei mumma. Meikara, you can apply a mum to the Maser Behema before it becomes Kaddish. Says the Gemara, how do you know which one is going to be number 10? Miyada hainafik, how do you know which one is going to come out as number 10? To single them out beforehand. Perhaps you can time yourself that this one should be number 10, the one that had the mum. You can't do that. Lo yivakar and tevil ra. Amar Achman Torah says lo yivakar. You can't differentiate. You can't pick and choose between the good and the bad, the one without the mum, the one with the mum. You can't. Amar Achman Torah warns against that. You can't. It has to be, totally random, just coming out naturally. Okay, v'chitema perhaps have another option. Efshad shada beimuma bekuli hedrei. He can apply mum to the entire flock, nick all the heirs, and then do the Maser Behema process. Inevitably, the 10th one will have a nick in his ear. And then you go and shecht it without tarrying, without a concern about takala. You know why you can't do that? We're anticipating a speedy rebuilding of the Beis Hamidrash, and we're going to be out of karbanos. Wherever you look, there's going to be karbanos with nicked ears of all the farmers in Eretz Yisrael who executed that solution to the takala problem. We're going to be seeking a behemoth for akrava lek. There's none to be found. So that's not an option. So let's go back to Bechor. How can you do the ear nick option? Bechor behema mehira, the same concern. Mehira ben Beis Hamidrash. We're a behemoth. We're going to be looking for a behemoth. We're not going to find any. Says the Gemara, that's only a minuscule percentage. Even though you nick all the bechorim, but the regular non-bechorim are still available. As opposed to our solution of Maser Behema, where you're going and nicking all the animals in the herd, in the pen. Well, here as well, animals that you purchased that weren't homegrown are exempt from Maser Behema. Those don't have to be nicked, because they're not candidates of Maser Behema. So you have at least a supply of lekuchen in each farm. Says the Gemara, well, what percentage of lekuchen are there? I mean, most animals are homegrown, born. There's a small percentage of those that the farmer might have purchased. So to start off, you're dealing with a very small percentage, and even amongst those, inevitably some of them are going to have natural blemishes. So you're going to be stuck with a very small supply. Basically, your animals are depleted. The answer is, since on the one hand the farmer applied a mum to the entire flock, and even the ones that were not, because they were lekuchen, it's very common to find blemishes by karbanos, by animals that feel dukan sheba'ayin. Nami pas, even the cataract in the eye, any slight blemish, and therefore you're pretty much out of animals. Okay, so it's not really a recommended solution. So we're not going to do a mum on the entire flock. And there's no way to identify and anticipate which one is going to be the Maser Behema. He's going to come out without a mum. Nowadays, the only road ahead is to hold on to him until he gets a mum. Might take a while, which can bring takala. So it's fascinating. Because of that concern, we temporarily, put on hold the whole mitzvah, the mitzvah d'oraisa of Maser Behema, which we don't do nowadays, because of chashash, takala, and ultimately because of mehira yibana Beis Hamidrash, because of that steadfast emunah and the upcoming redemption. We're so confident that we're willing to take the liberty, so to speak, and cancel mitzvah d'oraisa in preparation for the Beis Hamidrash. Pilei plain. Says the Gemara, v'chulin avlei b'mikdash. It only applies to your privately owned animals. Maser Behema does not apply to a carbon which you own. Mukdash, why would I think it applies to a carbon? It's not yours. It belongs to Hashem. Pshita, of course. Love the daininu, it's not his. B'chotrim kalam. We're speaking about the lower level karbanos, like a shlamim, which according to Rabbi Saglili has an element of personal ownership in it. V'aliba, Rabbi Saglili, the Amur tells us, kotrim kalam, mammon bailamim, is considered privately owned to a certain extent. The Sani regarding another halacha, molam al bashem. V'goyim l'rabbi is kotrim kalam, shen mammon bailam. The Rabbi Saglili. So Rashi explains we're talking about a fellow who denied a monetary claim and then comes around, he swore, he took an oath, and he came around and he admitted he has to pay back with the fifth, right? But that only applies to private money, not to karban, not to kachim. But according to Rabbi Saglili, you know what? Kachim kalam, because it has a personal element as well, ultimately part of it goes to the owner eats part of the carbon, so there's a personal element of ownership there, and it's considered ba'amitay, like it's, between, it's a dealing between individuals. It says B'Hashem B'Amitay. Rashi says that we're speaking about a sort of a joint entity which has an element of B'Hashem, an element of B'Amitay, and therefore it qualifies for this process of the Keren V'Chomesh V'Asham on account of his denial. In any case, what do we see from there? According to Rabbi Saglili, we deem Kachim Kalam as partly owned, as partially your own possession. And likewise, perhaps he's a candidate for Maser Behema. That's what I would think. So there's room to think, Liyasu, it should be subject to Maser Behema because it's partially yours, Kamash Malon. The answer is no. Why not? Sounds like a good reason. The answer is, we have a special pasuk which disqualifies this. Yeh kodesh amar Rachmana, lo shekvar kodesh. Pasuk says that when you count the animals, right, the 10th one, Hasir Yeh kodesh, will now turn into kedusha. The kedusha is now generated v'lo shekvar kodesh, as opposed to a shlamim, let's say, which already had an element of kedusha. So that's why it's out. Continues the Gemara. Time of the Kosher Rachmana Yeh kodesh. Apparently, it's only based on this extra pasuk. It would disqualify and exempt the karbanis from Maser Behem. Otherwise, without the pasuk, I would think Chayla Kedushas Maser Ilavayu. That yes, the additional Kedusha of Maser Behem will land on the pre-existing Kedusha. It already has Kedusha. It's fully saturated. You can't switch it up. You can't switch it down. You can't change the designation. Look, Hashta Kedusha Chamura, Kedusha Kalu Lechayla, even a higher level Kedusha, like a Kedusha of a Mizbeach, a Kedusha of a carbon, a Kedusha Kalu Lechayla cannot apply itself to a lighter Kedusha. Rashi explains, let's say he has an item which had been designated for Bedek HaBayis, for the building fund, an animal that was for Bedek HaBayis. It's a lower tier Kedusha. You can't upgrade it to make it into a carbon. You can't do that, as we're going to see in a minute. So, if a Kedusha Chamura cannot be Chal on a Kedusha Kalu Lechayla, certainly, if it already has, shlamim status, you can't just switch it over to Maser Behema, which is pretty much on the same level. They're both considered Kachim Kalam. Kedusha Kala, Kedusha Kalam Ebaya, goes without saying that you can't apply Maser Behema onto shlamim. Mayi, where do we find this halacha? That one cannot upgrade and change designations. It's not. Echad Kachim Mizbeach, Kachim Bedek HaBayis, whether you have a Kachim Mizbeach, a carbon, or something which is Bedek HaBayis, no switching. Ein Mishan and Oisam, you can't switch them over from one to the other. Kedusha LeKedusha. Aval Magdishin Oisa Hegdesh Ilu. There's something called Hegdesh Ilu, which means to say, suppose, he has a carbon awaiting Hakrav, and he says, I'm being Magdish to the Bedek HaBayis. So technically it's not going to change its status, but you as a person are not obligated to forward some money to the Beis HaMikdash. Rashi says it's called Teves HaNo. Because you have some benefit from this carbon. Fact is, the grandfather approaches and says, listen, take $5 and give it to my grandson, the Kohen, to take care of, and he'll get the hides and everything. You can accept that, little payoff. You can do that. It's legal. So that much you have, that much financial gain and interest you have in this carbon. So despite the fact that the carbon isn't really yours, you have some sort of financial interest in it, and that much you can donate to Bedek HaBayis. You say, I'm donating that interest that I have, so now you owe $5 to Bedek HaBayis. Tevis has a different approach. He says, Tevis HaNo means how much would a person benefit? How much? The fact is, you have benefit from bringing a carbon, you get a kapara, so that amount is considered your vested interest in this carbon, and that much you can donate to Bedek HaBayis upon your pledge. Likewise, you can donate this Teves HaNo through doing the Chayron process, another form of Hegdish. Okay, so now back to the question. It's pretty clear that you can't, change Kedusha, you can't change designations on a carbon. So it goes without saying that if I have a shlamim, I can't turn into a Maser Behema. Why would I think you could? I can't even upgrade. Of course I can't switch over to another Kedusha of equal value. So why would I need a pasuk to disallow it specifically by Maser Behema? That I can't take an oila, I can't take a shlam and turn it to Maser Behema? Says the Gemara, listen to this. There's room to make a distinction. Perhaps here it's different. You know why? Look, every animal, every sheep is a potential Maser Behema. Upon birth, he potentially can become Maser Behema. So really, every animal has it embedded in his genes, in his program. He's programmed for a potential Maser Behema. So perhaps that potential designation got its foot into the door first, before it became a shlamim. And therefore, it can be applied even now, at this late stage in the game. Perhaps I can think, in that case of the Mishnah, yeah, of course, the kol behema lav la'oila kaima. You can't say every behema is meant to be an oila. So once it's been, designated as one carbon, you can't switch it into an oila aval hacha. Right? So once you made a Bedek HaBayis, that's it. It's done. You can't switch it up. Aval hacha, but over here, the chol behema l'maser kaima. Every animal as it's born is a potential Maser Behema. Memela, I would think, Avak of the Agdashas, even though he actually turned it into a Shlamim, it doesn't lose its, it actually says Torah's Maser Mineh. It doesn't lose its connection to Maser, and perhaps it can. The Maser Behema status cannot be added to his pre-existing to Kedusha. Now, you may ask, what's the difference? I mean, it's already Kaddish. What additive? What happens now? Because it was relabeled as Maser Behema as well. Man of Gimel, what's the point? Below you go, below you machar. Maser Behema is a unique halacha. You can't redeem it, you can't sell it. As opposed to a shlamim, if it gets a blemish, you can sell. So perhaps I guess that added layer of Kedusha, and the answer is Kamashma, no. Here Kaddish. Maser Behema has to start from scratch, but once it's already Kaddish, you can't upgrade it to Maser Behema. V'noi b'bakar b'tzoyin, v'im nasashrim izalze, v'kwasim be'izim, v'masashrim izalze. So there are generally two classes of animals in terms of Maser Behema, bakar and tzoyin. The heavy, cattle, which has its own master, and tzoyin, which has its own, even though tzoyin really has two subsets, sheep and goats. What else has to be separated in terms of Maser Behema? Chadash and Yashan. This year's crop and last year's season. Says the Gemara, why? Perhaps we can propose that Chadash and Yashan should be Mis'asr and Mizazah. You can combine the two seasons based on logic. If goats and sheep can go together, certainly two goats of different seasons. Which are technically distinct varieties. You can't crossbreed them, Mis'asr and Mizazah, but you can master one or the other. Certainly, it's a question of seasons, but it's the same exact type. Chadash v'yashin she'ena. There's no issue of kalaim zebazeh. Wouldn't you think? Ein din, of course, she's asher mizazeh. You could do master of one or the other. You can combine them into one minion. Tamalaymar aser ta'aser. So the pasuk reads like this: Aser ta'aser, which is a double lashon. Aser ta'aser, referring to two types of master. Pasuk continues. It's called for zarecha, right? All your grain. Shana, every year is separate. The Torah is alluding to two types of maser. One in the field, one in the barn. Echad maser behema, one in the animals. Echad maser dogan. And the pasuk is linking the two to learn one from the other. Umakash. The Torah is correlating maser behema and maser dogan to learn. Ma maser dogan, just like the grain maser. You can't mix up the crops. Every season, every year gets its own maser. Right? Shana, right? Every year is separate. Af maser behema, likewise maser behema. Each year is separate. Ask the Gemara, okay, so Yachiv, you're comparing it to the grain, where we know that each type of grain, wheat, barley, is treated separately regarding truma and master, so perhaps goats and sheep should be separated as well. We should say makash, maser ben maser. We compare the animals to the grain. Each variety is unique and separate. You can't do maser from wheat onto barley. Av maser behema, likewise over here. You can't compare and combine and mix up goats and sheep. Well, we already have the answer for that. In the Mishnah, Rabbi Rachman Tzayin, the pasuk says Tzayin, all Tzayin, which means sheep and goats, all treated as one happy family. What about seasons? Mix the seasons as well. For that we have that correlation to Maser Dagan. They have to separate. But why are you preferring this correlation over the other? Meaning in Dagan we find two factors of separation. Seasons are separate and varieties are separate. You're comparing Maser Behema to Maser Dagan. In which respect? You're choosing with respect to seasons, perhaps with respect to types, goats and sheep. Marois. Amarava. Look at the last words of that pasuk. Amakra shana. The linkage between us and there is regarding the years. The shana kash, regarding separating the seasons. I have linked the two. But not regarding other matters, like the question of varieties, and therefore sheep and goats can go together. Okay, in a nutshell, we learned about Maser Behema applying everywhere, at all times. Cattle and sheep, but not korbanos. Bakar and tzayin have to be kept separate. Sheep and goats go together. Chadash and Yashan are kept separate. According to Rabbi Kiva, Maser Behema from Chutz La'aretz has kedusha without akrava. Nowadays we suspended the whole process of Maser Behema for concern of takala, which ultimately can bring shortage for Beis Hamikdash. We exempt Mugdashin, even Kachim Kalam, Kotar Pesach, which has a personal element of ownership, because the pasuk says, "Yeah, Kodesh, make kedusha anew," as opposed to on a pre-existing kedusha, which theoretically I would think you can do to add new stringencies of no selling or whatever. Pasuk exempts it from Maser Beim altogether. We derive from Maser Dagan that seasons have to be kept separate. Regarding mixing the sheep and goats, the word V'tzayin allows them to be combined into one minyan. All the best to you, and Hatzlacha Rabbah.